All right, the Rashbam. Shelley, you want to take it?
Yeah. Avrech, father of the king. We have some proof for this from Baba Batra, neither a king nor a king's son. Since we can discount the letter Aleph at the end, this being an Aramaic ending, if Racha means son of a king, then Avrech means father of the king. This is proven further from 45:8 when Joseph speaks of his position being Vayishmani La'av LePharaoh. He, God, placed me in the position of being a father, provider for Pharaoh. In effect, this made Joseph father of the king. The word Pharaoh, after all, is simply a title meaning king, not the personal name of an individual, as we explained already on verse 10.
All right. So, I'm not sure. I think this is commentary from this person that I got this sheet from. The word Avrech has also appeared in a few other places in Tanakh. So just a reminder, Tanakh means the 5 books of Moses as well as the prophets and the writings. So it's a bunch of other books as well. Well, this seems like a fact worth mentioning. The context is obviously different in these places, and the word clearly means I will bless, right? And it's interesting that nobody grabs that because, something that I like to tell people, when Barack Obama was president, where does the word Barak come from? It comes from bracha, to bless, Baruch atah. It's also Beis Resh Chaf, which is the same root letters. None of the commentators seen above note this connection, so they obviously consider this to be either a separate word or a separate use of the word. And he's just bringing some examples of where it's used as bless, avarech, right? So it's still avarech, right? Without the vowels, it can just as easily be pronounced the same way. I will bless the Lord who's given me counsel. Teda barech avarech, again, clearly means blessing there. Lastly, let's look at some modern chumashim, plural for chumash. I believe that's a difference in how they handle this, do a very good job of illustrating the differences between the philosophical outlooks of these various publishers. So Sansino Chumash, Avrech. Rashi and Rashbam explain, father of the king. Rashbam cites, he has made me a father of Pharaoh. Rashi also quotes 2 views of the rabbis, that it is a compound word of av and rach, tender. Right? So here we saw rach meaning royalty, we saw rach meaning short, and here we're seeing it tender. The one thing that I didn't see, which I was wondering about, is the first thing that comes to mind for me when I hear rach is rachmanus, compassion. But I guess that's kind of like the same thing with the Baruch. I guess they thought that this was either a completely different word or a different derivative of the word. A father in wisdom, though tender in years, and that it is connected with Berach, the knees, let all bend the knee before him. Ibn Ezra and Seferno adopt the last interpretation. The Hertz Chumash, probably an Egyptian word, right? So this is pretty gutsy of Hertz. Rashi is saying it's Aramaic, but he's going straight for it and saying probably an Egyptian word similar in sound to the Hebrew word meaning to kneel. Art Scroll Chumash, and they proclaimed before him Avrech. As Joseph rode on the chariot, the servants called out before him Avrech, which is a composite of 2 words, father, counselor or mentor, and to the Rach, which means king in Aramaic. Another interpretation of the word is that it is a composite of Av, father, and wisdom, though Rach, tender in years. And I know it's getting a little repetitive. We're going to switch gears in a minute. The Eitz Chaim Chomesh, Avrech, either an Egyptian word of unknown meaning or an Assyrian title. So this is actually the Chumash that we use, which is arguably a little bit more academic and brings a broader view. The Akkadian word abaraku means temple steward, or steward of the royal household, right? Which makes sense based on the context of the story, right? The father of the king is, you have to kind of go an extra step in your head to interpret what they mean by that. But this is clearly the position that he was given, which raises the question of how an Assyrian title came to be attached to the Joseph story, right? The same question that we might have of how an Aramaic title, he's saying that's also, we know that cultures are constantly taking words and ideas from each other, so it's certainly possible. All right, so this by Mitchell First, who's, I don't know what his official position is, but I love his work when it comes to grammar and Hebrew. And he writes in like a northern New Jersey Jewish newspaper, which I'd never heard of other than bumping into it. So he basically went through this week's Parsha, and he does this a lot. And any word that he found that didn't seem, like a regular word, he does a little commentary on it. So he caught this word, avrech. This word appears only at Genesis 41:43. Vayikru lefanav avrech, which is the verse that we're talking about. Most of our commentators see the letters bet resh chaf and translate it as something like bow the knee. Rashi takes a different approach, as we said before, where Rashi says king of the, father of the king. But perhaps the word is Egyptian. For example, Tawil is the person's name, mentions the suggestion that it is a command to pay attention and derives from Egyptian. He also mentions that in Akkadian, there is a word, abaraku, that means steward. So this is similar to what the Eitz Chaim edition said. Avrech eventually became a title for young rabbinic scholars. This is based on the statement of Rabbi Yehuda quoted in Rashi, Av b'chachma v'reach b'shanim. Mm-hmm. Right? And so the assumption, which in my humble opinion doesn't really stand in modern times, but back in the day, most people couldn't afford to go to Kollel. It was only the scholars, as opposed to today in some communities where it's an expectation that everybody does that. But if it really is just the scholars, then it makes sense that they're wise beyond their age. Mishnah Kalayim, and I'm bringing this. I didn't highlight it, but I'll find it eventually because it also mentions the word. Hamavrech es hagefen ba'aretz, if one bends the branch of a vine into the soil to take root, right? So I found this interesting because it's also a very similar word, mavrech, avrech. And there's a concept of bending, and we've heard the concept of bending before, but it was talking about bending a knee, and that's where they were getting the word from. Where here, it's the bending itself, right? Over here, we're talking about there's a prohibition of mixing certain plants to grow them together and other things like that. And what would be the case if somebody has a vine, it's growing here, and then he takes the end of it and plants it somewhere else, and I guess it's mixing it with whatever else is planted there, and what the story would be, but it's just another word for it. And I found a Kabbalistic read on it, which if you have the time and energy, you're welcome to go into, but it's a whole other level. But another thing that it got me thinking about is Hanukkah, right, which we're going into, and the word menorah. So that's what we commonly, we light the menorah, we think of as the main mitzvah of Hanukkah. But if you're in Israel, and you want to buy a menorah, the person is going to call it a Chanukiah. They're not going to call it a menorah. So the question is, where did this concept of calling it a menorah come from? So people assume, well, it probably came from the shtetl, right? We brought it with us. That's generally where we got a lot of things. But I was reading an article in Tablet that somebody did a deep dive to try to find this, and he found that in the shtetl, it actually was not called a menorah. It was called Hanukkah lempel, like a Hanukkah lamp. And anywhere where the word menorah was used, it was referring to the special lamp that was in the temple, which actually only has 7 spaces for a candle, as opposed to our Hanukkah one, which has 9. Right? And, if you think of Menorah Chapel, I can't say for sure what they were thinking, but if menorah only has to do with Hanukkah, it seems kind of strange to call a chapel a menorah chapel, right? Or there was a menorah publishing house, and generally that word was associated with the tabernacle that was, the candelabra that was in the temple. So do you guys want to go into this, the Kabbalistic deep dive a little bit?
Yes.
All right, we'll give it a go. Give me a second. Yeah, I don't know if any. Yeah, it's not letting me do the link. Hold on. I don't know if any of you have used this website, Safaria, but I know, for example, Sandy, that I don't know if you're still involved, but when you were doing the Bible class that you would have to present every so often, it's really a great resource.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Bible class hasn't met for a long time.
We'll have some other version of it hopefully soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
But if you ever have to prepare a Dvar Torah, it's just a really great resource. Anyway, so this is so we've been talking about the word avrech, and there's a whole bunch of different interpretations of what that word means. It's within the context of talking about when Joseph was appointed as the viceroy of Egypt, and the Pharaoh says that people will call out avrech. So the teaching from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right, and he's most famous. He's celebrated on Lag BaOmer. And he was a scholar. He's in the Talmud, but he was also a great Kabbalist. So the teaching of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai starts with the words "come and see," which is common in the Talmud. which can be interpreted as an instruction to visualize the tree of life or tree of the Sefirot at the same time as you are learning. This helps you to understand the relationship between the various parts of the spirit as they're being explained in the text. A representation of the tree of the Sefirot is on the homepage of our website. Does everybody have a little familiarity with the Sefirot, what we're even talking about here? Should I go over it a little bit? Lenore, I don't see a strong shaking of the head there. All right, we'll do a quick.
You want to do like a 2-minute Reader's Digest, 1 minute Reader's Digest version?
So the easiest explanation for the modern, I guess the closest thing that people relate to is the chakras. All right, if you do yoga, there's this idea that there's different points along the body that kind of correlate with different things. So on a Kabbalistic level, we have kind of spiritual chakras. And they represent different attributes, emotions, different things like that. And they kind of, it's kind of basically a mix of psychology and mysticism. All right, so the Sefirot represent the various stages of the divine creative process, whereby God generated the progression of Zahava got a hold of a dog's toy, so that's the squeaking in the background, of created realms culminating in our final physical universe. The Sefirot exists not only as individual entities, in addition to their separate and unique identities, they also interact in configurations depicted in the Kabbalistic text as having the structure of the human body. This is called Tselem Elokim, this supernal image of God, right? This idea that, we're created in the image of God. Just like the body, the Sefirot are arranged in vertical arrays. And let me see if he actually has a picture of it. It's very, oh boy, this is a long one. All right, it's very easy to find the Sefirot. If you just here's an example. Oh, where'd it go? Are you able to see it? All right, so Keter means crown. Bina is understanding. Chachma is knowledge. Dot is wisdom. Gvura is strength. Chesed is kindness. Tiferet is kind of blending. You see they're all kind of feeding in there. Netzach is victory, strength. Again, Yesod is foundation. Hod is beauty. And Malchut, again, is royalty. Keter is crown. Malchut is royalty. Is but certainly one of the ways that we use that is when it comes to the period between Passover and Shiv, it as a sort of guide to focus on those different attributes. There are times that we can be too strong or too forceful, and balance that out with the other side of chesed, kindness. Or there are times when we can be too kind, which seems like people might think, but you might be, enabling somebody who really needs your neglecting animals, like that. So that's kind of a practical application of it. And I will to here. There we go. The part about the world. Oh, that's not it because this is the wrong thing. Okay. So, explain second chariot. Remember that it says Joseph would ride in the chariot.
Rabbi, you're fading in and out for me. I don't know if anybody else is having that problem.
Oh. Is it for the picture or both?
Both.
Yeah, it's both.
I'm sorry, I don't know that I can do anything right now. But
it may be the subject matter is too deep for a transmission over the internet.
For this, that possibility exists. And I mean, these concepts are difficult, and I spend a lot of time on it, but I think that it's certainly it is part of our tradition, and especially when we're kind of doing a deep dive into something specific, it's certainly effective as well.
I think it's better now. I think it's when you go on the Google page that.
Okay. Maybe it was too many things open.
Yeah.
All right. Having explained that the second chariot implies that Joseph's father rides or hovers like a second vehicle above the vehicle of Malchut. And remember, Malchut was on the bottom of that chart that we saw. Rabbi Shimon now shows how the two are joined by focusing on the word avrech. An analysis analyzes some of its meanings. Avrech means connection, right? And this is interesting, and this is the part that really got my attention, because we read probably 10 to 15 commentators, and nobody said connection, right? So we'll see how he gets to that. Avrech means connection, implying the connection by which the sun and the moon are joined together. The sum total of the rays of light sent out by the sun are analogous to the sphera of Yesod, foundation, that collects and focuses these rays and faithfully delivers them to the moon. Make of that what you will. The word avrech implies that the joint in the legs called the berech, right? This we did see people associating the word with the knees or knee. The knee is the hinge on which the whole body bows to the king, right? And of course, when he's talking about that, he's primarily talking about the king, meaning God. And so that suggesting, I don't know if he says it clearly or I just got the impression that our knees were created to bow down to God, basically. Note the connection between bowing and kingdom, or reich, and the word breeches, or short trousers, that are fastened just below the knee. Wait, what did I just do? Come on. All right, maybe that's our that's our signal. That's as far as we need to go with it. But the idea, I just thought it's really interesting. You have this one word, and the consequences of translating it differently in this case are not very significant, right? It's not like it's just a specific, positive mitzvah or prohibition that is being interpreted in a wide range. But it's a good reminder of how important translation and interpretation is in understanding a text, and how far off we can go by reading one translation without knowing that there can be a whole other translation of meaning. Any questions about that or about Hanukkah? So one thing that came up in the Hebrew school, when they had the Saturday night thing, the Saturday Night Live, I think it's Saturday Night Chai, I think we're calling it. One of the questions was whether, when's the right time to light the menorah? And if you didn't light it at night, can you light it during the day? So the right time to light it is as the sun is going down. The idea was that people are coming home after rush hour or from the market or wherever it was. And the main point of the mitzvah is Persume Nisa, which is PR, basically expressing our gratitude and showing as many people as possible the miracles of God and our celebration. And so in that sense, even if it's not lit at that time, person can't get home on time or whatever the particular is, you can most definitely light it the next day. And I guess I'll wrap up with this one. Growing up, we didn't actually light it by the window, which seemed strange to me. And the reason was it was a holdover from a concession that was made in the shtetl in Europe, whatever you want to call it, a fear of anti-Semitism, that it would basically be attracting hatred, attacks, or whatever it was. And so they would light the menorah or Chanukiah inside the house and not there. Clearly, Chabad has really run with this concept of Persume Nisa, which it's almost ironic because on the one hand, there's been a major push to have menorahs, on Fifth Avenue, and I was down by the Trade Center on Friday, and I saw one, in there, and but when they light it privately, they're still continuing the tradition of not lighting it by the window, and that's sort of that sense of we don't want to make changes because of the slippery slope. And so on a personal level, they're not making the change, even though in effect, they're doing Persume Nisa on a grand scale.
Well, I can understand that, and I agree with it also, actually, because growing up, we never lit it in the window, and today is no safer than it's ever been, in my view, other than, really horrible points of, history. So although I do, sometimes I have an electric one and sometimes I do put it in the window. I'm always a little fearful when I do that. I'm more comfortable not doing it in the window.
Yeah.
You just
and
don't.
It's interesting.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Most families in my I'm sorry. I live in Willowbrook, very Orthodox area, and most families light it in the window. And they're not, they're just Orthodox, and they continue to light it in the window. I guess they feel a degree of comfort living in this community. But interesting, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I know Chabad has that huge menorah on the corner there of Bradley and Harold, that they have that celebration every year. But yeah, I guess they're just comfortable, which is good.
Yeah, and everybody's constantly gauging in different ways, and there's different attitudes. Like there are people that will just start walking over to people on an airplane and ask, "Are you Jewish? We're going to make a minyan."
Right.
And other people are like, "You're going to get us all killed." Right? And I think there's different attitudes. I mean, obviously, nobody intentionally wants anybody to get hurt, and nobody's trying to increase anti-Semitism. But how we get there, and some people believe that being assertive sends a message that we're proud of who we are, and that actually can decrease. But who knows? Anyway, just want to say hi, Marcia. I know you're there, and I know it's hard for you to talk on this thing, but acknowledge you. And wishing everybody a happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Interesting. Thank you.
In 2 weeks. I mean, I'll see you sooner, but for the class.
Are you coming? Are you coming next week?
I'll check with the cantor. I have to see. Well, let me check my